Hello, I'm Jonathan M0JSX and welcome to my garden. For this might turn out to be a little series of videos. So this starts with a story. So sit down and relax for a moment, not too long actually. So about a year ago I had a V-2000 put onto the chimney of my house. And for the last year it's worked absolutely brilliantly, no faults with it at all. Until last week, when I was transmitting on 6 meters, I was transmitting about 90 watts, and I have to say the antenna is rated for 150 watts, so there shouldn't have been an issue. But I was transmitting 90 watts on 6 meters, FM, and the antenna suddenly went high SWR on 6 meters. It also affected 2 meters and 77s with higher than expected SWR readings, but not as far as the 6 meter band went. 2 meters is now sitting about 2 to 1. The 70 centimeter band is now sitting about 1.5 to 1, both of which are higher than previously. 6 meters is off the end. It's almost as if there's no antenna connected at all. Now I've done everything I can do inside the shack. I've changed the connector on the end of the coax, tried some continuity tests, make sure there's not a short, and there's not. So it's come to the point where the antenna needs to be replaced, or certainly needs to get up onto the roof in order to A, check the coax for the dummy load, and then B, more than likely replace the antenna. And from speaking to a few people, it's likely that one of the capacitors in the base of the antenna has blown, and that needs to be replaced, and therefore then the antenna will work again. Unfortunately for me, getting to the antenna is not an easy process, so I need to pay an installer to go up there for me, because it's an old Victorian house with a slate roof that's quite delicate. I don't want to damage that. I don't want to be climbing on the roof myself, so I need to pay an installer to go up there for me and swap it over. I say swap it over because I've picked up second hand a second V-2000. I managed to find one on Facebook Marketplace for a relatively good price. I have to say I was quite annoyed when 2 days later I saw one that was even cheaper, but that's beside the point. But the antenna I've bought came from someone else in the UK Ham, who is giving up the hobby. He's only ever used it inside. He had a very tall loft, so he was able to use it inside. So all of the fixtures and fittings are actually brand new. So in this video today, we're going to put together the V-2000, or finish putting together the V-2000. I've already started. And then we're going to put it on this lighting tripod, get it up in the air a few meters, and check the SWR, and then make some adjustments, most likely for 6 meters, in order to get it onto the band. So I have a few bits with me. Obviously you can see the lighting tripod behind me, and the V-2000 itself just propped up against the fence. What I've already done is I've already put on the bracket, and I've attached a length of coax already. I've already done that, and then I also have, and apologies for any noise here, I have the radials. So I have the 2 short radials as well as the longer radial for 6 meters. I also have in this bag just over here an MFJ 259 antenna analyzer, which I'm going to use in order to check the SWR on 6 meters and 2 meters. Unfortunately this doesn't have 77s on it, so I can't rely on this for 77s. But stands to reason, if the antenna is okay on 6 and 2, it's more than likely going to be okay on 77s as well. Okay, so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to grab the antenna, I'm going to mount it on the pole, and then we're going to attach the radials. Okay, so I've got my lighting pole, I've got my V-2000, and I've already put the brackets on the bottom, as well as the aluminium tube, and also connected a length of Ultraflex 7. So I'm going to slide the brackets over the top section of this pole. And then what I'm going to do, and I will have to speed this up in the edit, which I've no idea how to do yet, I'm going to tighten these up, and I have in my back pocket my trusty adjustable spanner. So there we go, nothing overly tight, if anything, just slightly tighter than finger tight. So now it's time to install the 3 radials. So I'm going to do that now, and I'm going to pull you in nice and close so you can have a look up, see what I'm doing too. So I'm afraid this might be very dodgy camera footage, much like the video when we went outside and did a bit of portable. But on the V-2000, and in fact on most diamond antennas, you've got these 3 radial points around the base of the antenna. So, and on the V-2000, of course you have that long one, but actually it doesn't matter which one you put the 6-meter one into. So I'm just going to select this radial point here. It's a threaded screw, so I'm just going to very slowly thread this in. Now I can tell that this is a used antenna, because this, if you have a look, that radial as I'm screwing in is not straight. And that's fine, it's still going to work absolutely okay. These do tend to sag with use, and if this has been placed in a loft previously on the radials, which you really shouldn't do, then that might account for that. Then it's just a case of tightening up that little nut there. Again, I'm not going to do any more than just finger tight here. When I'm putting it up properly, that'll of course get tightened up with a spanner. We're going to put on the other 2 radials and then we'll raise it up in the air. So we've got the 1 radial on here, so I'm going to put the other 2 on. I'm going to start with the other short radial. Again, these are primarily for 2 meters and 70 sems. So I'm going to screw this one in. Again, this one also, much like that first one, has got a bit of a bend on it. It's a bit of a worry, but again, it's not going to affect things when it's up there. And in fact, what I could do with these 2, because I don't think it's going to be either of these 2 radials that's faulty on my antenna on the roof, as I could pull them from my antenna there. Finally, I'm going to install the 6-meter one. So you have this loading coil, and then a short stubby section, and then the longer whip. And it also has a screw on here, and we'll go into that in a minute, but ultimately that's how you adjust the antenna for 6 meters and its resonant point. So I'm just going to screw this in over this side. There we go, that's nice and in there. Again, there's a little nut there that I'm just going to do finger tight for now. If I were putting it up properly, I would of course get a spanner on that as well. So now the antenna is assembled and we're ready to just lift up into the air. So I do apologise for the fact that you're not going to see very much here as I do this, but nevertheless, on this particular tripod, we've got these little turning points here, which I'm showing you a cutaway of now, of course. And all you do is simply unscrew them very slightly and lift up. Now this lighting tripod doesn't have any stop, so it's very easy to pull the pole right up, like I just have there. So I want to slide it back in some and then tighten up that section. And then I'm going to do the same on the second section. Now these lighting tripods are brilliant for doing things like this. If you're after a portable mast solution, these work really nicely. They don't give you very much height, that's the only problem with them. I'm going to go that high, that'll do fine for me. They don't go up very high, but they go up high enough for applications like this. And it's a relatively windy day today, and I don't feel it's going to be falling down. So now it's up in the air, give you a quick look at that, and then we'll move over to seeing what the SWR is like on 6 meters and 2 meters. So once again, it's very dodgy hand camera work, I'm afraid. But as you can see, it's not very high up. I mean, it's probably at that base, it's probably a couple of meters up maybe, but it's just high enough to clear the local obstructions. It is a little close to that tree if we're being a little bit picky, but never mind, it's going to be absolutely fine. And then we can see the length of Ultraflex 7 coming down the pole and terminating in, well, the coax itself actually terminates in a BNC, which I then got an adapter to a PL259 on. Simply because this length of coax I normally use with the IC705, of course, has got the BNC on it for there, and then that adapter because we're going to put it onto the MFJ. So let's move across, let's have a look at the MFJ and let's see where this antenna is resonant at the moment. Okay, so we're sat down at the table and I've got the MFJ 259 here, and I've also got for this MFJ 259 something that's coming really handy. I picked this up on everyone's favourite online auction site a couple of years ago, but it's a USB charging cable, and it's 5 volts in, 12 volts out, and as everybody knows, the MFJ meters need 12 volts, but if you're doing something like this, it's far easier, he says, pulling his hand right in front of the camera, to use one of these USB battery banks than it is in order to, go and grab a 12 volt battery. So with this cable, I can plug into the battery power bank. It's got a red LED on it to tell me that it's getting power, and that way I can use this cable, plug it straight into the MFJ. It's a bit of a tight fit, but it does work, and I can turn it on, and that way I can use the MFJ using that battery rather than relying on a 12 volt battery. I'm now going to grab my length of coax. I'm just going to plug that PL259 into the antenna, or into the antenna analyzer, sorry, and we'll have a look to see where we are resonant. So almost immediately at 143 megs, we're showing quite a good SWR. Let's sweep up the band. And so we'll do the top end of the UK band. So yeah, 145.9, 146 megs, 1.2 to 1. Very happy with that with 50 ohms. And at the bottom of the band at 144 megs, just a smidge over, what's that, 1.1 to 1 potentially, probably not even that. So very happy with that. As I said, I can't measure 77s with this antenna analyzer because it doesn't do 77s, but the fact that we've got a good SWR on 2 meters means we're more than likely going to see a good SWR on 77s as well. Let's change the scale here. We'll pop it down onto that scale so we can measure 6 meters. So let's have a look. See, 48 megs, we're over 3 to 1. Let's sweep up. Oh, and there's a nice dip there. Almost slap bang in the middle of the band, actually. That's absolutely perfect for me. So I don't need to change anything on this antenna, which is a bit disappointing, but we'll show you how to do it anyway. But this is, 51 megs, it's 1 to 1 at the bottom of the band. So 50 megs, we're showing just over 2, probably 2.3 to 1, which is fine. I mean, the internal tuner inside my 7300 is going to cope with that. And then let's put it up into sort of the FM part of the band, sort of around 51.4, 51.3, 1.5, sorry. 1.2. So this is tailored slightly towards the higher end of the band, but with the dip for 1 to 1 right slap bang at sort of 51 megs itself. I'm happy with that, and I'm not going to change it. I'm going to leave that as it is, and I'm going to for when I'm working FT8, so 5313 is of course the FT8 frequency, which I do a little bit of FT8. So it's around there, 1.7 to 1. I'm happy with that because I know that even at 3 to 1, that's about 1/10 of your power coming back down the coax. So I'm very happy with that performance. 1.7 to 1 for me, absolutely fine. I thought as one final little test, what we could do is grab an actual radio. So I've grabbed my ID52, which I'm going to take the antenna off the top, and I've got one of these short cables, which is an SMA one end and then an SO239 the other. I always recommend using one of these rather than using a straight adapter, particularly to a PL259 or an SO239 the socket, simply because those short adapter pieces put quite a lot of stress and strain on the SMA connector on the radio. Now you've spent upwards of £500 on an ID52, for instance. Don't want to be putting too much strain on that SMA connector and potentially ripping it off the board and having a very costly repair back at ICOM UK. So I use a little adapter piece and it works great. So at the other end, it actually terminates at a PL259. I've just got a back-to-back adapter there. So I'm going to grab my piece of coax that's coming down from the antenna, just plug that straight in. And yes, I could be using, I've got adapter city here because obviously I've got BNC to a PL259 to an SO239 back-to-back to another PL259 to an SMA. Yes, I could use an SMA to BNC adapter piece. I don't happen to have one to hand, so that's what we're doing. There's not going to be too much loss involved in all of those connectors, if we're honest. Oh, it's picking up my hotspot absolutely fine. That's not what we wanted to do, but it's nice to know it's there. So that's on 2 meter calling frequency, that's fine. But on this sub VFO, I've got my local VHF 2 meter repeater, which is GB3RD. Now this is only, it's less than 10 miles away from me, if that, and I can normally get this on a handheld. So if I can't get this on the V-2000, I'm going to be very surprised, even only 2 meters up. So let's just give it a quick blip, and there we go, fully quietening. That's exactly what I expected. 0JSX testing. So let me try a few other repeaters that I know that I can get on the antenna on the roof. No idea whether I'll get them at a lower height. So GB3VA is a little bit further away from me. I can't generally get this on a handheld, but I can get this on a slightly better antenna, sort of the longer, let's say diamond whips that you get, the SRH771 for instance. I know I can get this on. So let's just quickly blip this up and let's see if we can open GB3VA. 0JSX testing. So once again, fully quietening, I say fully quietening, certainly fully signal strength, but just a little bit of noise there. Again, very happy with that performance. Let's try final one. Let's try GB3WH, which is over at Swindon. Now that's quite a distance from me. On the antenna, when it was working on top of the chimney, I could get that around about an S7, S8. I'm going to be slightly surprised if we can get it on this much lower antenna, but let's certainly give it a try. M0JSX testing access. So no, as I expected, didn't get it, but that doesn't mean the antenna's not working. It just means that it's just not working in this location to that repeater. Once up on the roof, I suspect that'll work absolutely fine. Let's now hop over to some 70cm repeaters. Now I have to say that my local 70cm repeater isn't always on air. It seems to have a bit of a fault on it, which means it's not always on air. Let's see if it's on air at the moment. This is GB3DI, which is in a town called Didcot, which is 5 or 6 miles away from me. Actually, the repeater itself isn't. It's actually a place called Harwell, but it's named after the nearest, biggest town. So I'm going to try and give it a blip up. There we go. It is there. M0JSX testing access GB3DI. So as we can see, it's there. It's floating around with a bit of a wind there. That could be more than likely the repeater side, actually, because I've just had a look at the antenna and it's perfectly stable. But I'm very happy with the fact I can open GB3DI. Let's try a repeater a little further away. Again, one of those repeaters that I know I can access on the antenna on the roof, even with its slightly high SWR. Unsure as to whether I'm going to work it or get into it with a much reduced height antenna, which is GB3BN at Bracknell. So I'm going to give it a quick dip up. Maybe, I think that might have got into it there. M0JSX testing access GB3BN. Possibly not, no. But that's okay. As I say, I didn't expect to be able to get into that. So there we have it. The V-2000 that I've purchased secondhand is working absolutely fine. In the next video, likely that I do in this series, is going to be getting the antenna installer in order for him to take down the VHF, the V-2000 that's up on the roof, and then we'll pop a dummy load on the end of the coax, make sure the coax run is fine. I have no reason to suspect it's the coax. I very much thinking it is the antenna itself, and then we'll swap over the antennas. And then we'll look at repairing the V-2000 to make sure that it is working, and then we'll either use it as a portable antenna, or perhaps I'll sell it on in order to pay for the antenna that I've had to buy to replace it. Make those decisions further down, but for now, thanks very much for watching. If you want to see the review of the ID52 that I did, obviously I've shown it today, but I did do a review of the ID52 not that long ago. You can find that by clicking the card just up there, not quite sure, or a link in the description below. That's probably easier, isn't it? But until next time, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you soon. 73, bye bye.